These are the Awakening Chronicles. This is Book 2, Awakening on Main Street. Chapter 11, The Healing Field. The Tuesday morning rain drummed against the windows of Elena Rodriguez's home laboratory with the kind of rhythmic persistence that usually helped her concentrate. But today the sound seemed to underscore the weight of the decisions she was avoiding rather than soothing her into productive research. She stood before her consciousness measurement equipment, its sophisticated sensors and monitoring devices arranged with precision she had learned to bring to all of her scientific investigation, but her attention was divided between readings displayed on her screens and the email that had arrived an hour ago from Dr. Margaret Shen at Johns Hopkins Medical School. Elena read the message again, although she already knew its contents by heart. Your preliminary findings on consciousness coherence in therapeutic environments represent the most promising breakthrough I've seen in psychoneuroimmunology research in 20 years. The university is prepared to offer you a professorship, unlimited research funding, and dedicated laboratory that would make your current setup look like a high school science fair project. We want to discuss how your consciousness mapping technologies could revolutionize our understanding of the mind-body connection in clinical medicine. The offer was everything Elena had dreamed of during her years as a graduate student, struggling to legitimize her interest in consciousness research within conventional academic frameworks. But that was her awakening that had begun. But that was before her awakening had begun. Before the stranger introduced her to ways of understanding consciousness that transcended anything her scientific training had prepared her to investigate. Now she possessed knowledge that could transform healthcare, but only if she could find ways to integrate mystical understanding with institutional science without compromising either. Her phone buzzed with a message from her 4 friends, each documenting how their individual work was beginning to create what she had started calling a network of consciousness throughout the city. Maya's text carried excitement. Sound healing sessions at Leo's construction site went beautifully this morning. Elena's reading showed coherence patterns unlike anything that we've documented before. The whole crew reported feeling focused and collaborative, more so than ever after this session. Joe had sent a message shortly after. 3 customers at the cafe this morning mentioned having unusually vivid dreams after drinking coffee I prepared with conscious attention yesterday. They all described dreams that helped them resolve problems they'd been struggling with for months. We're definitely onto something significant here. Leo's text was characteristically practical. The consciousness-infused concrete we poured last week is testing stronger than conventional materials while creating measurable effects on people's mood and attention when they spent time near it. Each message reinforced Elena's growing understanding that her consciousness research was not just an academic exercise, but a practical tool that was already transforming people's lives in measurable ways. The healing field she was documenting and learning to navigate was not a theoretical construct, but a living reality that responded to conscious attention and could be systemically studied and understood. Elena opened her research notebook, reviewing the data she had collected over the past months of working with her friends and their expanded community of conscious practitioners. The findings were remarkable. By any scientific standard, measurable improvements in psychological well-being amongst people who participated in conscious community activities, documented changes in biological markers among individuals who received healing work from practitioners trained in consciousness techniques, statistical correlations between community coherence levels and individual health outcomes that exceeded any placebo effect. But the Johns Hopkins offer represented a different kind of validation. The recognition from mainstream academic medicine that her work had potential for widespread application in clinical settings. The research possibilities were extraordinary, studying consciousness effect on the immune system function, documenting the role of healer intention in therapeutic outcomes, investigating the mechanisms by which consciousness influenced biological processes. The challenge was that conventional medical research operated within paradigms that treated consciousness as an emergent property of brain function rather than a fundamental force that could influence biological systems directly. Elena's experience had taught her that consciousness was far more than neural activity. It was an ongoing and organizing principle that could be consciously directed to support healing, development, and transformation at levels that conventional medicine was only beginning to recognize. Elena's reflection was interrupted by footsteps on the stairs leading to her home laboratory, followed by familiar voices of her friends as they gathered outside the door. She'd been expecting them. Their Tuesday morning meetings had become regular as a Joe's coffee service routine, a weekly opportunity to share their individual development and coordinate their collective work. Maya arrived first carrying her violin case and a kind of focused energy that suggested her morning practice had gone particularly well. "I can feel conflict from outside," she said, settling into the chair. The chair that Elena usually kept for visitors. "This is about the university offer, isn't it?" Elena wasn't surprised that Maya sensed the nature of her internal struggle. Their group's consciousness development had enhanced everyone's sensitivity to each other's emotional states. "How do you choose between legitimacy and authenticity?" Well, Elena asked that, gesturing toward her computer screen where Dr. Chen's message was still displayed alongside her consciousness research data. "Everything I've dreamed of achieving in conventional science is being offered to me. But accepting it would mean abandoning the most important discoveries I've made about how consciousness actually works." Then Joe appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray with coffee and pastries that filled the laboratory with aromas of comfort and groundedness. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I was in the neighborhood and thought you might need some nourishment while you work through whatever's troubling you." Elena accepted the coffee gratefully, recognizing that Joe's service had evolved far beyond providing caffeine. He had developed an uncanny ability to appear exactly when people needed the kind of support that came through shared presence rather than advice. Leo arrived as they were discussing the implications of different approaches to consciousness research, carrying blueprints for the community center that showed how Elena's measurement of consciousness effects had influenced the architectural design. "I've been thinking about our conversations yesterday about the relationship between documentation and application," he said, spreading the plans across Elena's work table. "Your measurements of coherence patterns influence the proportions of meditation rooms," he continued, pointing to the scientific elements of the building design. "Your documentation of consciousness effects on materials helped us select construction methods that enhance the building's ability to support community work. But the research only becomes meaningful when it's applied to creating something that serves people's actual needs." Tariq entered the laboratory as they were examining the relationship between Elena's measurements and Leo's architectural applications, carrying a notebook filled with observations about humor's effect on group consciousness. "I couldn't help overhearing your discussion," he said. "I've been facing a similar dilemma about whether to accept television offers that would reach larger audiences, but require me to modify my approach in ways that might reduce its effectiveness. The question isn't whether to choose mainstream exposure or consciousness authenticity," Maya said, her musician's understanding of harmony extending to the integration of different approaches to serving awakening. "The question is how to use each to legitimize the other. Maybe mainstream resources could be used to demonstrate that authentic conscious work of what it could be used to demonstrate what authentic consciousness work can accomplish." The insight Maya was articulating resonated with Elena's deepest understanding of how consciousness activity worked. Rather than trying to explain consciousness effects in terms that conventional medicine could accept, she could use scientific methodology to document results that would force conventional medicine to expand its understanding of what healing could include. Joe nodded with recognition of someone who had learned to serve awakening within conventional business structures, like using a coffee shop to demonstrate what conscious service looks like, then letting customers discover for themselves that it's different from ordinary commercial experience. Leo was sketching modifications to the community center plans that would incorporate space for Elena's research while ensuring that the research served the community's development rather than abstract academic goals. Tariq was already envisioning comedy performances that would serve as research opportunities, entertainment events that would document how humor affected audience psychology and social dynamics, comedy shows that are also consciousness studies. He said, where the audience gets both healing, laughter, and the satisfaction of contributing to research that could help other people. Elena felt excitement building as she recognized how her friends were helping her envision approaches to research that could honor both scientific rigor and consciousness authenticity. Research that serves the development of all people who participate in it, studies that contribute to healing rather than just analyzing healing, investigations that teach people to work with consciousness rather than just documenting consciousness effects. She began to understand that the choice between conventional academia and consciousness research was based on false assumptions about what research could be and whom it could serve. Instead of choosing between mainstream validation and authentic consciousness work, she could use mainstream resources to demonstrate what authentic consciousness work could accomplish, creating research that served both academic credibility and individual healing. I think I know what I want to do, Elena said, reaching for her phone to compose a response to Dr. Chen's offer. I want to accept the position, but on terms that allow me to conduct research that serves consciousness development, rather than just analyzing it. Studies that help people develop their own healing abilities rather than just documenting the effects of healing interventions. Maya's violin responded with harmonies that seemed to confirm the validity of their emerging understanding as Elena began typing her response. Thank you for your generous offer. I'm interested in discussing how we could structure a research program that investigates consciousness effects on healing while simultaneously training healthcare providers in the consciousness techniques that make therapeutic interventions more effective. Elena continued composing her message. My preliminary findings suggest that consciousness research is most accurate when it's conducted by researchers who have developed their own consciousness through direct practice of these techniques they're studying. I'd like to discuss how we could integrate consciousness development training for researchers and healthcare providers into the academic medical program. Leo nodded with approval as Elena described research protocols that would document consciousness effects while healing healthcare providers to work with consciousness in their clinical practice. Research as education, he said, were studies that train healers while generating knowledge about healing mechanisms. Tariq was grinning with appreciation for Elena's approach to bridging mainstream and consciousness paradigms. You're not trying to make consciousness research fit into conventional medicine. You're demonstrating how conventional medicine could become more effective by incorporating consciousness techniques. Maya's violin produced harmonies that seemed to celebrate Elena's decision to pursue both academic credibility and consciousness authenticity without compromising either. Research that serves awakening rather than just documenting it. She said, her music weaving their individual insights into collective understanding. Elena's morning had revealed that her consciousness measurements equipment had measured patterns in the healing field that confirmed what she had suspected. Consciousness research was most accurate when it was conducted by researchers who had developed their own consciousness. Studies were most reliable when they served the well-being of the people being studied, and scientific findings were most valuable when they could be translated into practical applications that improved people's lives. Her protocols would include training programs for healthcare providers who would learn consciousness techniques while participating in research that documented the effectiveness of those techniques. Medical students would study healing by practical healing. Researchers would investigate consciousness by developing consciousness, and patients would contribute to scientific knowledge while receiving therapeutic benefit from participation in consciousness studies. By afternoon, Elena had created a comprehensive proposal for a research program that would establish consciousness development as a legitimate field of academic study while training healthcare providers in therapeutic techniques that could revolutionize clinical medicine. The program would serve both individual healing and collective understanding, both academic advancement and practical application, both scientific credibility and consciousness authenticity. Dr. Chen's response arrived as Elena was reviewing her proposal. This is exactly the kind of innovative approach we need in healthcare education. Your integration of consciousness development with scientific research represented a paradigm shift that could transform how we understand and practice medicine. When can you start? As evening approached, Elena reflected on the day's revelations with her 4 friends gathered around her laboratory bench. What had begun as a choice between incompatible approaches to healing had evolved into an opportunity to demonstrate that science and consciousness could serve each other in ways that benefited everyone involved in the research process. The healing field Elena had been studying was not just a subject for research, but a living reality that could transform healthcare, education, and scientific investigation itself. By conducting research within the healing field rather than just studying it from the outside, she could generate knowledge that was both scientifically rigorous and practically applicable to improving people's lives. Elena spent the rest of the evening developing protocols for consciousness research that would simultaneously advance academic understanding and provide therapeutic benefit to study participants. Each procedure she designed was both scientifically rigorous and healing-centered, generating knowledge while supporting the development of everyone involved in the research process. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as Elena began negotiating the establishment of consciousness research program within a major medical institution. But today had taught her that bridging mainstream validation in consciousness authenticity was not only possible, but necessary for both scientific advancement and individual healing. The healing field was expanding, and Elena Rodriguez was ready to serve as its scientific ambassador to the medical establishment, bringing the rigor of consciousness research to healthcare providers who were ready to learn that healing was both an art and a science, both a mechanical process and a conscious relationship between healer and patient that could transform not just symptoms, but lives. As her friends prepared her to leave for their respective work, Elena felt her laboratory had become more than a space for consciousness research. It had become a healing field where scientific investigation and therapeutic application could serve each other in ways that benefited everyone involved in the research process. The expansion of healing consciousness from individual practice to institutional transformation was no longer a distant possibility, but an immediate opportunity that would begin with Elena's first day at Johns Hopkins Medical School.